Hello and welcome to Rested Life. I'm so glad that you are here with us today, and I'm so excited for what we have in store for you. We have a wonderful, exciting conversation that we're going to have today, and I brought one of my friends, Nathaniel Drew. Nathaniel Drew pastors in Cleveland, Ohio. He is the husband to one wife, the father to one daughter. And I'm just so glad that he took time to join us today. I'm going to go ahead and bring him in. Nathaniel, how you feeling today, sir?
And I'm good, brother. I'm good. Good to be here. Grateful for the opportunity.
Awesome. Before we really get into the conversation, man, let the people know a little bit about yourself, what's going on with you right now, your background. Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. What's going on, everybody? Good to have your ear, your eyes, however you're hearing this. But Nathaniel Drew, a pastor here in Cleveland, Ohio, at the Temple of Praise, Seventh-day Adventist Church. Been pastoring now for about 8 years, and the Lord has been good in regards to that. And just recently, last year, in fact, I finished a second master's degree in marriage and family therapy. And so mental health is very much a passion of mine, and really what I'm after is how God intends for me to kind of blend ministry and mental health. And so that's just a little bit about me. I could go on, but that's a little bit.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. And that's perfect for the subject material that we deal with here at the Rested Life. The Rested Life, the idea behind it is that the blessing of the Sabbath, and some listeners may not be familiar with the Sabbath, but that idea of rest, but the blessing of the Sabbath is supposed to be available on a daily basis, not just confined to the weekend. Whenever people go to church or go to worship, whatever they may do, it's not confined to the weekend, but the idea is that there is a rest, a peace, a tranquility even available to people on a regular basis, on a daily basis, man. So it's perfect. You're the perfect person to have this conversation with. And I'm just interested to know what is your personal definition of Sabbath or of rest? What does that, what have you learned just in your life journey about Sabbath and rest?
Man, that's a loaded question. And I want to say before I answer that question that this, what you're doing with this podcast and dealing with this topic is so very important. And I believe that one of the main reasons for that is for the question that you just asked me, my own personal definition of Sabbath. And, listen, it has morphed so much over the years, because the way I see Sabbath now and the way I experience and deal with Sabbath now is completely different from how I was raised to see the Sabbath and relate to the Sabbath. I'm not saying it was all bad, but there's been some growth. There's been some metamorphosis that has taken place. So if I had to give a personal definition for Sabbath that I believe the Lord has called, has brought to my mind and heart, given where I am right now, it would be a mental and physical break from the norm.
Okay.
And I would add to that a mental and physical break from the norm that frees me up to connect unhindered, both relationally and spiritually.
I like that. Okay. So in your definition, there is a purpose behind the Sabbath. And it seems to be to heighten one's ability to connect. Am I on point with that?
You're on point. And if I could add a few more words to that, it's exactly what you just said, and specifically as it pertains to what I believe are the two biggest areas or major areas of our lives, which is those around us who we care about and who we love, being able to have an opportunity to connect with them unhindered, and then most importantly, being able to connect with God. And I know I'm not saying anything to you that you don't already know as a pastor. Sabbaths are anything but rest, man. They're anything but time to connect, because we're going to and fro. We're expected to do so much. And this pandemic I can't speak for anybody else, but this pandemic has been a major conviction for me, because it has shown me that for pretty much all of my pastoral ministry, I have robbed my family of a true Sabbath experience. I've
Wow.
robbed God of a true Sabbath experience because if I'm being honest, I have not been free enough. I've not been unhindered enough to connect not only with God, but not even to connect with my wife and even my daughter. So this thing really hits home with me.
Wow. That's major. That's major. For those who do not know, both Pastor Drew and myself, we for the most part had the same theological training. We come from the same church context, the Seventh-day Adventist context. So for us, many times when we say Sabbath, we're talking about Saturday sunset, Friday to sunset, Saturday evening, and it's been the same thing for me. It's interesting that you say that because it's a juxtaposition for pastors. Whether you go to church on Saturday or Sunday, whatever day of the week it is, you would think that Sabbath is supposed to be rest for us, but oftentimes it's not. And then it took a forced pause with this pandemic to get us to realize we haven't been resting. And yeah, man. And I love the fact that you, in your definition, you really kind of emphasize the relational aspect. And it's intriguing because I recently had I had a podcast where I talked about just some very practical pieces that I wanted to suggest to people about living the rested life. And one of them, and the one that was actually most important to me, was spending time with people that I love and find happiness with. And I know growing up for me, that wasn't what I was taught rest entailed. I thought they would call that fun. And rest and fun weren't supposed to be synonymous for some reason. But spending time with those I love and those that I find happiness with really has kind of come to the surface as like an indispensable ingredient, man. So yeah.
Bro, listen, that is so deep that you that you say that in terms of that, that relational piece as well. And for me, right in the very beginning, right? And I know, I've kind of got caught up in this as well. We tend, when we look at, the whole creation story at the beginning, we tend to emphasize all these things that God created before the Sabbath came so that he could rest. And so we glory in the fact that he was able to separate the waters and create the heavens and the trees and land and fish and birds and all that other stuff like that. But what I think does not get as much emphasis as it should is the fact that in addition to all that great stuff, something else that God did before the Sabbath came was he created the family, right? And he created them right before that Sabbath rest, so that they could experience that together. And somehow we've missed that component generations later.
Right. And I love it. I don't know if you remember the book. If you had the book, it was Sit, Walk, Stand by Watchman Nee. And what he points out is that Adam's first day was the seventh day of creation, which means that he woke up into resting with God. That was one of the things that after college, it was actually a part of class and I didn't read it. I ended up picking it up after college, and it was a pivotal, it was a shift in my view of what it means to live a rested life. I'm like, I cannot be a stressed and worried and anxious person and truly experience Sabbath or rested life. Just plain and simple. So in your line of expertise, and you have two lines of expertise. You're both a pastor as well as a therapist. That those two heavy things, stress and worry, do you see those as just major obstacles to living a rested life? And how does that play out in your line?
Listen, bro, that was probably the most powerful question that you could have posed. And my answer is absolutely yes. Those two beasts, especially that first beast that you mentioned, stress. I think those are are huge impediments when it comes to living a rested life. And I love that as well, that, it's not just the emphasis on a Sabbath break from sunset one day to sunset the next day, but I love this term that you have come up with, a rested life. And I think that that stress is a huge thing that blocks out. I was watching a documentary just last year, and I don't know if you've seen it or heard of it, but it's called One Nation Under Stress. If any of you have not watched that documentary, you can even look up the article. He wrote an article on it. His name is Dr. Sanjay Gupta. Some of you have seen him on CNN as he's been covering the coronavirus during this pandemic. But he did a documentary. Well, he didn't do it, but he was featured in a documentary that was entitled One Nation Under Stress. And some of the things that came out of that particular documentary were just mind blowing, such as statistically, 8 out of 10, every 10 Americans deals with chronic stress, such as the point or the point that he brings out. And I believe that was just done like maybe 2 or so years ago, that we now in America have the lowest life expectancy rate that we've had in over a decade. And this being a country that yearly spends about $3.5 trillion in healthcare resources, yet our life expectancy rate has continued to decline for the past 3 to 5 years, right? To the point where the documentary is talking about stress, to the point where the documentary brings out that there are 3 things that they term deaths of despair that Americans are suffering from right now. And those deaths of despair come from 3 things, which is alcohol consumption, opioid use, and suicide. And so what the documentary is showing is that we as Americans are so stressed, but even in our stress are determined to avoid what we need, which is rest. That we go to these destructive means like opioid use and alcohol consumption and even suicide, because in our minds, I would rather do that. I would rather go to those extremes than rest. And we're seeing, man, by the millions, we are seeing Americans die shorter than where they need to die, simply because of those 2 beasts that you mentioned, stress and worry.
What's that phraseology? The death of what? What is that again?
Of despair.
Death of despair. That is heavy. And what comes to my mind as you talk about that, it's almost as if, and you kind of said it already, people are running away from stress and worry into things that really have that numb rather than solve. It's a numbing that people are seeking. And I don't know, I think that's one of the benefits of a rested life, the blessing of the Sabbath, that in reality, rest heals. It doesn't numb. Rest heals. I think about my my younger, bigger brother. And he of course is a IBFF pro, and he's a personal trainer. You're talking 6'3", 210 pounds of pure muscle. Yeah, man, he's a big guy. But one of the things when he experiments on me with these meal plans and workout routines, he's all and I've peeped you on Instagram. You've been hitting it hard. I'm like, there ain't no way I'm doing all this stuff that Daniel's doing. I'm not doing it. But at the end of the day,
I still don't look like him though.
But no matter what type of workout you do, you have to rest. You can't just keep going. Rest is as integral as actually eating well and exercising. If you don't rest, you won't mature. Your muscles and the composition of your body won't have time to restore. And so many people, especially in America, we go and go and go, and many people experience guilt when they stop going and don't realize that in order to be the best version of themselves, in order for their I'll say physical, mental, and emotional muscles to regenerate, they have to eventually stop. And it's like, that's hard. That is so hard for so many people.
Yeah. One thing that comes to mind when you mentioned that, this idea that we just go, and I imagine, hamsters in a cage on that wheel where they're just running around and around and around, going in circles. And it reminds me of an article that I read recently that said, from the standpoint of Americans, that yearly, I think it was somewhere in the billions of dollars that we allow to go allowed to go to waste of paid vacation time that we have earned, at our jobs, that we forego and we choose not to take because we feel like we're going to miss a deadline if we're resting. We feel like, somebody might get ahead of us if we take some time off. And we literally allow thousands to millions of dollars to fall through the cracks because we don't want to rest.
That's bonkers.
It's crazy, man.
That's crazy. That is crazy. So as a therapist, what are some practical steps? Because it's hard. It's hard. Like I feel it even as a pastor. If I'm sitting in my house and say my wife took the kids somewhere and I'm just sitting, I'm like, man, I'm wasting my time. I'm a bum type thing.
Yeah.
So, and I think that there's a mental reality that all of us deal with when it comes to that. But as a therapist, what practical steps can you give someone to dealing with stress and worry?
Yeah. One of the first things that I would say, and I didn't even find out about this until somebody told me about it last year. I would say one of the first things and most important things that you can do is to find out what all is covered by your health insurance.
That's good.
I just found out that the health insurance that I'm under has a certain number of massages that I get under that health insurance plan a year that I did not even know about. And so I'm going to Massage Envy and I'm paying hundreds of dollars, to get these massages every now and then when my insurance covers it. So I would say, one of the first things you can do is take advantage of the benefits that you already have. If you have 10 massages allotted to you under your health insurance plan, you're already paying into it. Let's go get that massage and do yourself a favor and take a break. Right. Another tip that I would give, and I struggle with this. So I'm saying on the front end, I'm not speaking as somebody that has mastered this, but right. I know how detrimental it can be not to master it. And that is the simple art of saying no.
That's good.
And see, for me, that's hard for me. One, because I already, by nature, I struggle with this, with this issue of people pleasing. I don't want to let people down. And so I say yes and say yes and say yes. Sometimes I double book because I say yes so much. Right. And one text that the Lord has brought to my mind that has just humbled me is Ecclesiastes 3, verse 1, where it says, listen, there's a time, there's a season for everything under the sun. There's a time for everything. And so I'm learning that there's a time to answer phone calls. There's a time to turn that thing off. Like there's a time to clock in and it's a time to clock out. And so we don't have to jam pack everything on our agenda into every season of our life.
That's good.
We got to learn how to compartmentalize. And when I'm at home, even if and I love what you said about if your wife takes the kids and you have a few moments at home, we got to learn to also capitalize on the moments that we're given. Even if it's 5 minutes, if it's 30 minutes, if it's 45 minutes, you'd be amazed at how much a small break where you can just unwind, you can just rest, get a mental rest, an emotional rest where you don't have to be on. Just imagine how tiring it is for you to have to be on 24/7 without a rest. It drives you crazy. That's a few things that I would say. In addition, I can't get off without saying this. Finding a therapist, you would be amazed at how much of a mental blessing that would be to be able to put therapy into your regular routine.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I want to zero in on two of them. The two of them that you said. You talked about saying no and finding a therapist. Let's deal with the no one first. And I think that that's significant because something that I haven't yet been able to touch on when it comes to living a rested life is the necessity of boundaries. And I think saying no and the art, my dad calls it an art. The art of saying no is something that is invaluable. I definitely struggle with it. My wife knows good and well that I struggle with it. And you're deeper into it than I. I'm about 3.5 years into marriage.
Yes,
and marriage has taught me that I better learn to say no real quick to people who are not my wife. So but I think that to really kind of emphasize that when you say no, there is nothing that you are obligated to do. It's always good to kind of keep that in your mind as just the base of it all. And I think that that's just significant, that a piece of possibly entering into the rested life could be someone learning to say no. Your time is valuable. Your rest is valuable. And my principle that I'm trying to just drill into people is you are not only resting for yourself. It is for you, but you are becoming the best version of yourself for everyone around you. And if you're saying yes to everybody, you are so stretched thin. You are so thin that you can't possibly give quality on a consistent basis. I thought that was so powerful, man. I thought that was so powerful.
Good, bro. And you are listen, you are convicting me as you speak. You're convicting me, man. And one thing I'll add to that, because you took the words right out of my mouth with that, so I don't even need to reiterate that. I know for me, and I'm almost ashamed to say it because of how much I put limitations on God, where I kind of entertain this idea that if I don't capitalize, when somebody offers me an opportunity, if I don't capitalize on this opportunity and say yes now, then this opportunity may never come again, right? For me, it just feels wrong to put limits on God, that when somebody asks me to do something, that's the only door that God can open like that. And I'm learning that, listen, if I gotta say no to this, that there's 20 other doors that God may open if he wants to open them, right? And that should not be the deterrent as to whether I learn to, prioritize myself, my well-being or not.
Man, that's powerful. And I know there's someone listening who may not believe in God, may not bang with church or organized religion, but I think that principle is applicable to anyone's walk in life. That you saying no does not negate the possibilities of further opportunities. That's just not how it works. And I truly believe, and we believe, that your gift that you have been created and purposed with creates room for you. And you saying no does not negate your gift and does not negate the potential that your gift has created for you. That's beautiful, man. That is beautiful, man. One last thing, and I want to give you some time to kind of work through this. We're talking about a rested life. And maybe like I said before, maybe there's someone here who's listening who goes to church all the time, and then maybe there's someone listening who has never been to church or has been hurt by the church or just doesn't believe in what the church is talking about. So I want to ask you, what does a rested life look like in your opinion? And we've kind of touched on it here and there, but if you were to kind of step back and kind of catalog what a rested life looks like, what would it be? What would it look like?
I think that I have to steal one of the words that you already mentioned, and then I'll add an additional word to it. And I would say that a rested life, I believe, is built on the hinges of boundaries and balance.
Yeah.
Boundaries and balance. Because I'm just gonna be honest, with you all. Maybe some of you all are like me, and this can free you. But at heart, help me, Holy Ghost. At heart, I can go to the extreme very easily of not doing anything. Like I am a laid back person. I love watching TV. I love watching movies. I love sports. So if you give me a window of time where I don't have to do anything, you better believe I'm not going to do anything, right? And so for me, I can very easily go to that extreme where I'm procrastinating and I'm not taking advantage of responsibilities that I'm supposed to be doing because I just love me time. And so I think that balance becomes very critical. It's not just the ones who work all the time, but it's also the ones who don't do what they're supposed to do on the other end of the spectrum. I think that if we can somehow, get that thing so that it meets in the middle. And I think that one of the things that helps with that, which you've already hit on, Rashad, is boundaries, right? Boundaries. Being able to compartmentalize. And so especially, and that can be especially difficult when we're at home during a pandemic like we are right now. And so for me, what that might look like is coming into my office and shutting the door and being in here without distractions, right? For an allotted amount of time. And I'm saying to myself, I have this deadline to meet. I have these projects to do. And so I'm going to allot this time to get this done. Now, when I finish with that allotted time and I leave my office, then and I go back out and I'm with my wife and I'm with my daughter, then because I'm compartmentalizing and I'm setting boundaries, when I leave my office, I'm not out there reading emails and I'm not out there answering the phone calls and taking more responsibilities when I'm supposed to be using that time now to spend with my family. And it can get conflated very easily. And I've been there during this pandemic where I'm out there with my daughter, she's playing and stuff like that. She's calling me to play with her, and I'm like, baby, and I'm doing something right now because I'm reading an email or I'm writing some notes down for something that I have to do later. Because in my mind, I'm saying, where I'm physically here with you, that should be good enough, right?
Yeah.
This idea of a restful life, I don't think that it can be a rested life. I don't think that can be achieved until we are able to set boundaries, and then until we're able to, as much as possible, get some balance in our lives, so that nothing is suffering in any area.
That's powerful. That's powerful. I felt that when you spoke to me because my son, he's a talker and I'm not a big talker. And I turned the switch off sometimes. That's powerful. Boundaries, and what was the second one?
Balance. Boundaries and balance.
Boundaries and balance. I love it. How does someone, you mentioned therapy, and I don't want to gloss over that one. How does someone find a therapist? That's a very simple question, but I think that we are finally transitioning as a culture into a place where we realize it has to be Jesus and therapy. How does someone find a therapist? And
man, before I answer that question, I really appreciate you asking that question, because I think that there are many of us who don't understand the connection between our mental health and our behaviors and the things that we do. Like, one of the things that I have noticed with people, especially those who work a lot and work and really aren't experiencing this rested life that you and I have been talking about here, that a lot of times, people who are going are not just doing that because they just don't like rest, but a lot of them are doing that because they are trying to create value in themselves towards what they're doing. And that could stem from a childhood when you didn't hear somebody tell you that they loved you, that you were important, somebody who did not affirm things that you did growing up like they should have. And so now you're seeking that affirmation that you should have gotten from mommy and daddy. Now I'm seeking it from my boss. I'm seeking it from church. So I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to do that because I need somebody to tell me you're important and what you did was needed, right? And so the reason why therapy is so important is because I am able to dig deep in the recesses of my mind and my heart. And I'm able to dig through some stuff, some trauma and some hurts to be able to find out why I do the things that I do and be able to get some coping mechanisms to deal with that. And so what I always tell people when they ask me that question, how can I go about finding a therapist? I want to give you a website, which I believe is one of the best ways to go about finding one, which is psychologytoday.com. Psychologytoday.com. And the reason why I love psychologytoday.com, and I just want to let you know, so you don't think that I'm telling you to do something I haven't done. My therapist, I found him on psychologytoday.com. And so I'm telling you not something I've heard, I'm telling you something I've done. And the reason why I believe that website is such a good resource to have is because you can literally type in and hand pick the exact therapist you want. You can put images of them so that if you are Caucasian and you prefer to have a Caucasian therapist, you could have that. If you are Black and you prefer to have a Black therapist, you can have that. If you prefer to have a woman or a male, you can have that. You can see what they specialize in so that if you need help with anxiety, you can find someone who specializes in that so that you're not just like, okay, give me him or her and hoping for the best. Right. And so it allows you to, in a very refined and detailed way, look for exactly what you need and then be able to go forward with that. And so psychologytoday.com is what I would suggest as an answer to that question.
Man, that was a word in and of itself, as well as just practical direction, man. You brought to my mind, and we'll go ahead and wind down. You brought to my mind Peter Scazzero's book, The Emotionally Healthy Leader. And he actually talks about how he references his book, The Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, that you cannot be spiritually mature and emotionally immature, that they are forever interconnected. We have a lot of people who have been in church a long time, and they correlate the amount of time they've been in church with their spiritual maturity. But let you say the wrong thing at the wrong time, and like you said, that stuff that they haven't dealt with rises up and just turns into the weeping and gnashing of teeth. So yeah, man. And I love that you pointed out this, and I'll tag it this way: identity. I think that even biblically speaking, and I just talked to someone recently about this, that a partial purpose of the Sabbath is to reinstate a particular type of identity. The Sabbath, of course, is first mentioned biblically in Genesis chapter 2. It's actually not mentioned again until Exodus chapter 16. And that's after the children of Israel have come out of Egypt and they encounter the manna. And God's like, listen, on Friday evening, you need to take a double portion, and I'm going to make sure that it doesn't rot like all the other days. And what I really believe God was doing was trying to drain them of the false identity that they had taken on because of all the work they had done over the past 400 years, and replace it with their true identity in him. So, man, I know, and I think this is applicable to multiple generations. So many people get their value from their occupation, how people respond to them, whether there's affirmation or accolades or public recognition. And it's like, man, what if a person got to a place where the only affirmation that they needed was that they were that they were being who they were meant to be, that I'm comfortable in myself.
Yeah.
and comfortable with you not liking me or saying thank you, because I know I am successful because I am who I am and I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Yeah, man, I think that is a place spiritually and mentally where you can truly rest. That you can truly rest, man. You have
Listen,
anything
bro,
else?
I appreciated that perspective. I don't think I've given as much thought to the connection between identity and the Sabbath before you said that. So thank you for that. That was powerful.
Oh man. Check it out, man. It's amazing. And I think it's so relevant in these times with so much racial unrest. And I just spoke to Dr. Samantha O'Bannon a little bit ago about this very thing, that trauma can actually be passed through genetics. So, and she talked about how Black people, having gone through chattel slavery here in America, that we have a genetic stress that's in our blood. And this rested life that we're talking about goes in complete contradiction to that thing. It is trying to break us from having to get the approval of somebody else. I'll just say that. Having to get the approval of somebody else in order to believe that we're doing a good job, that we are successful. And I think that that's truly one of the purposes of a rested life, to restore our identity. So yeah, man, you have any closing thoughts as we wind down?
Listen, man, I have one, just one piece of advice for all those who, like myself, at times struggle with the guilt of trying to to live a rested life and saying no and pushing pause. And I wore it intentionally. Jesus took naps. Jesus took naps. You have nothing to feel guilty about. Take care of yourself so that you can give the best of yourself to the ones who matter most.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I thank everyone for joining us for the Rested Life. I thank Pastor Nathaniel Drew and his family for lending him to us for just a minute. And I know that what has been shared will truly help me and anyone who has listened in to strive in this journey of living the rested life. Take care, everyone, and live